بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming. So this topic is one that we chose to address because it's something that a lot of people have questions about, and a lot of people are undertaking the process of getting to know someone for marriage without a lot of guidance, without a lot of support. So as you know, within our community, we have a strong tradition of taking advice and taking support from those who serve as imams, as teachers, as shuyukh, and this is perhaps one area where that is not really happening as it should, as it could. So a lot of the times in, for example, my work as, let's say, a chaplain or as an advisor, I get people coming to me in the middle of a process or at the end of a process where they've been trying to get to know someone, and they're already in a state of crisis by the time they reach out to me. So the situation has either become a situation of stalemate where they have no idea what's going on. They had every intention to get to know this person for an actual outcome, like marriage, and now they're in a state of just talking to this person almost every day without knowing where this is going to go. Is this ever going to result in a proposal? Is this ever going to become something that they can show to their parents, or is it always going to remain this kind of a relationship taking place via WhatsApp and text messages, and there's no wedding in sight? That's one kind of crisis that people come to me with. And another kind is where there is what we are calling ghosting, which is a new, I guess, term. It's a new phenomenon to some degree that's made possible through WhatsApp and these other means that we have, these modern means of communication. I'm saying modern, I mean it's modern for me. At the time when I was getting married, those were not really there. So in that sense, you know, it's something recent. And I know I'm dating myself by saying that, but that's good. It's always good to be older these days. So ghosting is where, you know, there have been a few, you know, messages to get to know each other back and forth, and then all of a sudden the other party disappears completely, doesn't answer any messages, has left no trace of where they are. And so this is called ghosting because they disappear like a ghost into thin air. And of course this leaves the other person in a state of shock sometimes, in a state of discomfort, and in a state of feeling let down by that process. And a third type of crisis is, of course, the heartbreak. The heartbreak that occurs after someone has taken a lot of time to get to know another person, has invested, has become vulnerable, which you have to do to some degree when you're trying to get to know someone who's shared parts of who they are and what they hope for in a life shared. And then the other person lets them down, sometimes for no good reason, sometimes because the other person is simply afraid of committing, which also adds to the sense of heartbreak because it's not even clear really what went wrong. So these are some things that people are experiencing, and perhaps you who are here in the audience have you know someone who's gone through that, or perhaps you yourself have gone through one of these situations. I'll add one more because it's very pertinent. In fact, just today somebody was writing to me just before I left home to come here, and that is a situation where two people who are like-minded, who are both religious, who seek to have a religious life together, have met usually from a religious setting like a masjid or working on a dawah project together, and they come from different worlds, socially speaking, culturally speaking. They're not from the same ethnic background, and yet they have good potential to become wonderful spouses to one another, and they've not done anything wrong in getting to know each other. And their parents, at least one set of parents, steps in and says, this is absolutely not happening, because the other person is not from the same village that you are from and that we are from, and we need to maintain our bloodline, essentially, and not let it get sullied by another ethnicity. Of course, they don't put it in that language, but that's what it is. So these are the things that are going on for young people who are simply trying to do something halal, and they're getting all of these obstacles placed in their way. And so it's important that we speak together as a community. Amongst us here are scholars, parents, elders. All of us, we play a role in allowing and enabling and empowering other people to get married. This shouldn't be an individual pursuit. It's a community responsibility to look after people and to help them to get married. In fact, in traditional Muslim societies, there's money set aside for that. There's a kind of sadaqah you give just to enable people to get married, to let a girl have a nice dress to wear for that occasion, to have some food to serve her guests. We have a bigger problem now than just the economic problem. And so we have to adjust, and we have to start to give sadaqah in a different way, which is to give our energy, to give our support, to give our wisdom, to help take someone by the hand and help them through this process so they don't end up with a broken heart. A broken heart is a very hard thing to deal with because it's the heart through which you connect to your Lord. And if that's broken, then we've got a bigger problem on our hands than just a few tears cried in the night. So we need to take care of this altogether, and there is much guidance to be had in our religion. Our religion has left no gray area, alhamdulillah. There is guidance that we can seek, and so this talk is meant to shed light on those things and how we can access resources that will allow us to go through this process in a safe way, a way that doesn't hurt us and it doesn't hurt other people. So I will pass the mic on to, I would like to pass the mic to Shaykh Walead, because I think that one of the most important things when we're looking at any process is to think about the relationship between the means and the end being the maqsad. And we know in Islam that the end does not justify the means. Just because you have a good intention about where you'd like to end in a particular process doesn't mean that you can take whatever means necessary. So sometimes we end up taking whatever means necessary because we don't have guidance, not because we deliberately wish to go outside of the boundaries. And I think that's what I see mostly with people. It's not that they're deliberately trying to take whatever means necessary, but they feel sort of that they're in a void. They haven't been shown how to do this in a healthy way. So perhaps in terms of how we can determine what is a healthy way to get to know someone for marriage, asking questions like, should I make an online profile on a marriage website? Should I, if I see someone on Facebook who I like, should I private message them? Should I go through a friend? Should I go through the imam? Should I ask my parents to talk to his parents? Should I just go up to him and ask him to go for a coffee with me? How do I know what to do? I think that if we look at what the whole intention and purpose of marriage is, this will shed light on how we can actually take steps and what steps are purposeful towards that outcome. Is that okay to hand that over to you now?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلوات وتم التسليمات على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وسيد الغر المحجلين سيدنا محمد وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So first I want to thank Shaykh Hamdi and Ustadha Shehnaz and Ustadha Rowaina and Sidi Ilyas and Stefan and all the rest of the crew here at Rhoda Institute / Lotus Community Center for inviting me this weekend. It's quite an honor to be invited here and to have the good opinion of them that we might be able to somehow participate in what they have to offer here. So I'm quite honored and humbled by that. The topic at hand, I think what I wanted to do is kind of look at it from a couple of different perspectives. And I think as Ustadha Shehnaz pointed out, it's not really an issue about the individual, or two people looking to potentially make a life together. Marriage is, it's cliche, but it's an institution, and it is the building block of communities and societies. And without it, you really can't have viable communities and societies. There are always going to be some type of shortcoming, some type of deficiency in that. Every generation goes through a kind of process where the way that they do things may be somewhat of a departure from the generation before. And that's actually quite normal, and it's to be expected. It's quoted that Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu wa karamallahu wajha is very famous to have said, you know, don't raise your children in the same manner that you were raised, because they were created for a time, not your time. So one of the obligations of any community and of society is to be very well versed with the particulars of their particular community, society, time period, right? What they would call الظواهر أو ظاهرة العصر. You know, what is it about our particular time that's kind of defines it and will present challenges to us for us to do things the way they used to be done, right? Nowadays, when we talk about how people used to get married, and we're only probably maybe 2 generations away from how it used to be, maybe some people in this room got married that way. So it's not that far away, but generally speaking, people who used to live in more tight-knit communities had a much easier time of finding a spouse than we do now. So one of the things that's a marked departure is we don't really have communities anymore. We don't really have neighborhoods anymore. And when I say we, I'm talking really most of the world, even in what you would think a traditional agricultural village in Punjab or in Mansoura or in Zarqa, doesn't matter where it is, these things have changed. And so we don't have kind of the what they call الترابط الأسري والضمان الاجتماعي, the kind of social connections that people used to have. And even in America, wasn't that long ago, or in Canada, I shouldn't say that, in North America, wasn't that long ago, and the Canadians get a little upset when we forget about them, neighbor to the north and all that, whatever. Sorry, I had to say that. Even in North America, wasn't that long ago when people knew their neighbors, people looked out for each other in the neighborhood. I remember when I was a child, and I grew up in kind of a black neighborhood in a suburb of New York City. And I remember if I would do something that was outlandish or out of line, I had a fear that the neighbors would go tell my parents about it. And sometimes they would threaten me with that. I'm going to go tell your father what you just did, so forth. And I would be afraid because I knew that there was that kind of relationship. Nowadays, if you were to do that, you'd be threatened with a lawsuit, and the parent would be very upset. Why are you talking to my child? It's none of your business, all that type of thing. So we live in kind of very individualistic, egocentric societies. And I'm not going to say community, because the community means it's about each other and it's about kind of the community outlook. But now we have very individual outlooks. So this has had an effect on everything, from the way we raise our children, to the way that people get married, to the way that people make friends and keep friends, right? We kind of have a throwaway attitude towards everything. It began with consumerism and our products. So people now feel the need to kind of buy a new car every few years, and if they get a bump in their salary, they have to get a bigger house. They have to get like a summer wardrobe and a winter wardrobe, and this kind of cycle of recycling of things has also extended to other parts of life, and it has even extended to friendships. So now we have virtual friendships on social media, on Facebook, and we have levels of severing relationships. So maybe it begins with the unfollow, where they don't know that you're not following them anymore. And then it may be, if you really can't stand them anymore, you go and do the nuclear option of unfriending them, which they don't get informed about, but if they look and see if you're on the friends list anymore and you're not, then they figure out that you unfriended them. And then if they try to friend you again, then you go even more and you block them. Right, kind of what Ustadha Shehnaz was talking about, ghosting and so forth. So we feel kind of comfortable to some degree about just completely severing a relationship without any explanation and with the same ease that we would take out the rubbish, put it on the curb, and not give it a second thought. So this throwaway attitude about relationships and about things that we interact with definitely is going to affect everything that we do. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because if it affects everything that we do and it's affecting how people get married and the ease by which we get married, then I think that's the root cause. We have to start there. So there's definitely going to be some short-term things we need to do, but there's going to be some long-term things we're going to do. And as Muslims, we're the last group really that has answers to a lot of these things. The answers may not be forthcoming immediately, but we have the roots. We know where to go. Right, and we just have to apply it, and we have to have resolve, azima, and go towards that. Nobody else is even thinking in that way. Most other people think we're actually making progress, which is a problematic notion of itself, that somehow we're progressing and we're doing better. And the fact that, you know, when birth control first became widely available in the West, and then you had the so-called sexual revolution in the 1960s, and then that began kind of the downward slope of fewer and fewer marriages, and as the cliche goes, if you get the milk for free, why would you buy the cow? And this is exactly what's happening now. So even marriage as an institution everywhere is becoming out of favor. And I just read an article, I think it was in the New York Times, it was today or yesterday, that Iceland has the highest incidence of people born out of wedlock. 67% of mothers there have babies and no partner or no husband. 67%, so 2 out of 3 have that. And you know, the other European countries, especially in Scandinavia, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, are not too far behind. And then the other European countries are actually not having babies at all. There is a population crisis in countries like Italy, countries like France. Japan has it the worst. The UN says, or population studies say, you need to have a 2.1 rate of children per family to replenish, just to merely replenish your population. Japan just a few years ago was at like 1.8, 1.9. That means their population is getting older and it's dwindling. And so sooner or later, they're not going to have enough people to actually support their population. And this is also the trend in Europe as a whole. And it would be a trend in North America were it not for the many immigrants who come to North America and have children in the same way that their brethren and their family members have them in their countries. So they kind of balance it out. But otherwise, we'd be looking at something like, you know, 2 or less than 2 children per couple. And so you're not replenishing your population. And now there are incentives in places like Italy for people to have children would actually pay them money. And the one-child policy in China has completely backfired on them because now they have a problem with population as well. Now they're actually removing that one-child policy and they're encouraging people to have children, because one of the outgrowths of that one-child policy is if you only get one child, then I want it to be a male, which is a whole other issue. And so they have this imbalance between men and women, between males and females. So obviously another issue with marriage. And in South Asian cultures, societies, or Far East Asian cultures and societies to begin with, places like China, Japan, Korea, men and women don't want to get married anymore. You have a thriving sex doll industry in those countries where people will literally just have a doll and that's their spouse. And it's made to feel and touch and everything like a regular person, so they don't need to get married after that. And now you have the trend of people actually marrying themselves, having a whole wedding ceremony, and with all of the party favors and everything, and they're actually marrying themselves. Yeah, it's a thing now. So we have to read the whole picture holistically, right? Look at the whole thing and see where it's going, see where it's trending. Then we should not be surprised, because one of the things we can draw out of this is definitely we're affected by the greater communities and societies around us. We don't live in a vacuum. We don't live in a little bubble where we're not going to be affected, nor should we think we could ever live that way. As long as we are living in these communities, these societies in North America or elsewhere, there's no reason to think that somehow we're working our way towards a place where we can have this virtual bubble around us and we will not be affected by the greater community issues. I don't know of any place that can do that. You know, the only places that's like that, we call that Jannah, paradise. They're not affected by the people in the downstairs department. But other than that, I can't think of a scenario where that can actually work. So if that is the case, then we have to not only think about where things are right now, we got to think about where things are going and where they're headed. And I think it's only going to worsen. And one way to read some of the ahadith that give about ashrat as-sa'ah, some of the signs of the last day, that there will be 50 women to each man, it may not necessarily mean by numbers, but it may mean by meaning, right? Because al-rajul ghayru al-dhakar, right? A man is different than a male, right? And women can have rujula and muru'ah. And the Quranic verse says, الرجال قوامون على النساء. It doesn't say الذكور قوامون على الإناث. الرجال, the men that have صفات الرجولة والمروءة, right? That have the attributes of manhood, right? And these male attributes, as I said, they are not unique to males, right? But there are certain attributes that have a particularly male, or I should say masculine character to them. And there are other attributes that have a particularly feminine character. And you're not a balanced human being unless you have both. So generally, attributes that are kind of ra'fa and rahma, of ease and of mercy and of gentleness, we associate that with the feminine characteristic. But men should have some of that. And then the male characteristics, right, or the masculine characteristics of taking on responsibility, shouldering burdens, you know, being a ra'i, seeking, you know, to one's flock, as it were, and the people that count on them, that's a masculine responsibility. And I would say in our time that women are doing a much better job of that part, right, than the men are. They are more masculine, not because they choose not to shave their legs, but they're more masculine in the sense that they are doing more of these masculine attributes. They are shouldering more of the burdens. And that's true, I think, in the greater society, and unfortunately I think it's very true in most Muslim communities as well. And so one of the root problems is tarbiyyah, right, which is the way that we are raising our children. We are raising generations of egotistical, spoiled, self-gratifying little brats, for lack of a better word. And we're teaching our kids to be like that, because the greater society around us is like that. And so, you know, our poor sisters, and I'm kind of on their side a little bit, but that's just the way I read it. I don't mean to offend anybody, but our poor sisters, you know, they are closer to the fitrah, I think. They're closer to the idea of they want to get married and they want to have a family and they want to have children, they want to raise them. Yeah, and so forth. And our men, they want to play PlayStation, FIFA 2018 and John Madden football and you know, and other things. And you know, I'm going to offend some people. If you're above 30 and you have Xbox or PlayStation in your basement and you spend like a few hours each week or each day playing that, something's wrong. Something's really wrong with what you're doing. Yani, we had Osama ibn Zayd, 17, leading an army and shouldering the responsibility of leading an army with people who are twice his age, people old enough to be his father and grandfather behind him, including Abu Bakr wa Umar. And the Prophet ﷺ, of the last wasaya, one of the last things before ﷺ he passed the ri'asa, the responsibility of being the leader of that army, and the Sahaba respected that choice. And we had younger Sahaba who were 13, 14. They wanted to participate in Badr. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you're too young. 13 and 14. So what is it different about those 13 and 14-year-olds than our 13 and 14-year-olds, right? We have to introduce new routines for our children. We have to get them away from the iPad and the internet and the Facebook and the Twitter and the Snapchat and all of these things that they waste their time with. And a lot of that responsibility, I think, has to be shouldered more by our men. Women kind of don't have a choice. They're the ones who give birth. They're the ones who have to let the infant suckle and breastfeed in the beginning. They're the ones who invariably have to change the diapers. And they're the ones who have to mash the potatoes and the sweet potato and, you know, the zucchini and make it soft and put it for the baby. They do all that, right? So they learn, whether they like it or not, very early on how to do that. While the men, you know, the baby cries, wakes up in the night, oh, I can't sleep, all right, I'll go in the basement and let's do some PlayStation. If he wakes up, right. I'm one of those people who didn't wake up, I admit. I slept through it most of the time. I hope my wife is not watching on the internet. But I'll get a phone call right now. What are you doing, talking about us? Anyway. So I think we should have حل شامل. We should have a comprehensive way of looking at it. And many of the issues that Ustadha Shehnaz brought up also have to be addressed, right? They're kind of particulars of the time, but I think there needs to be some of us also who are looking kind of at the bigger issues. And you know, most people nowadays, when they heard how like people used to get married and they didn't even see each other before they got married, and they call that arranged marriage, and how's that even possible? It was possible because they were raised in very similar way. Their families grew up with one another. They prayed next to each other in the masjid, the two fathers, for example. They shared ayad, they shared Eid together. They would, the wife, the mother would knock on the door of the other and ask if she had any extra salt or kammoon or whatever she needed to cook. And so there was already this ishra, there was already this, they knew each other beforehand. So then the next step of marrying their children off wasn't such a far fetch, right? Because the expectations were very much in line. And that's why many of our teachers, they said, marry the girl down the street. Literally, like marry the girl next door. Why? Because the expectations will be in line. The way that you see life will be quite similar. You share language, you share many things. And the idea behind marriage is not to go for the exotic and the unknown and adventure. The idea behind marriage is stability and duration. So if that is the point, then we start to need to rebuild our communities, right? I'm a father of a daughter who eventually is going to get married, and I have 4 sons too. If someone comes to me and I don't even know him, I have no idea who he is, he's some kid off the internet, right, that messaged my daughter on some, she's not really allowed to go on Facebook, but let's say for argument's sake, message her, right, and he wants to get to know me, and he's coming from nowhere. On what basis can I make an evaluation of him? And I don't know him, right? One of the things is that you need to know one another, and not just the prospective wife and the groom. The family needs to know. And so one of the other things that's missing, I think, today is people might think it's overburdening the involvement of the family, but the family has to be involved in a productive and positive way, in the sense that they're also an additional set of eyes for the prospective parties. So it used to be that the prospective wife or the girl would go sit with the mom of the groom possibly, and she'd get to know the aunts, and they'd, you know, make tea together and have a little conversation and that type of thing. And then the same thing would happen with the groom. He would be with the father and maybe some of the brothers and that type of thing. And you know, it would be kind of a family process rather than shouldering this burden completely by themselves away from the family, and then just hoping that somehow the family, you know, taking it to so many steps ahead, and then as Ustadha Shehnaz said, then they get to the point where they decide they want to do it, and then the family has no clue. They don't know about it. And I think it's important for the families to be involved, because you're not just marrying that person, you're marrying a family, you're marrying into a community. And believe me, if you don't want to, but you will not have a sustainable marriage unless you're surrounded by family and community. Because invariably you're going to get into a disagreement. Invariably you're going to get into an argument. Invariably one of the two parties somewhere along the lines, probably within the first year or two, is going to feel like, I don't want to do this anymore. That's normal. It's not abnormal. So when that happens, what do you do? If you're just left to themselves, they'll say, okay, it's not working for me. Ma'as-salam. I'm going to go my separate ways. That's why we have a similar divorce rate to the overall divorce rate, which is about 50%. And 50% is not acceptable. That's horrible. That means 50%, half of the marriages are doomed to fail eventually. So I think our communities should make this a priority, a number one priority, one of the highest priorities, by actually forming communities, right? By having strong familial connections. Many of us, we don't have extended families where we live. And due to the economics of the world today, many of us, we move away from what could have been our extended families, or our uncles and aunts and parents and cousins and so forth. So if we don't have that type of social support structure, we have to make our own. And that means our own means by forming these communities, right? And real communities, not virtual communities online and we all like the same events, but we actually see each other and we converse. And if you need to talk something out, there's someone that you can call. We need to have things like that. And we need for our children to have in their lives someone who serves as a sort of elder, mentor, teacher, sheikh, whatever you want to call it, type of figure that's not the parents. What used to be known as al-kabir, right? Kabir al-qarya or kabir al-a'ila. You used to say when someone just is off on their own, doesn't listen to anybody, mulush kabir. No one can talk to him because he doesn't listen to anybody. He doesn't have a mentor. He doesn't have a teacher. He doesn't have a sheikh. So he's just thinking on his own. And then he's just going to follow his own whims and desires. But our children need, for the tarbiyyah to be solidified, they need to have those figures in their lives who reinforce what the parents are doing. So it's not just the parents and then you seem like the crazy one because everybody else is doing the complete opposite thing. This is what we mean by community. And we will not have successful children and raise successful men growing up to be men and who know how to shoulder responsibility and know what it means to be a man and take care of a family and all that goes with it, unless he sees those examples in front of him. If he doesn't see those examples in front of him, if he sees a society that rewards those who shun such responsibilities or skirt them, or those who make their way in life by way of insult and running over people and harming people, then where are they going to get these lessons from? Right? They're going to get the opposite lesson. So, we need these very live, vibrant namazij, these exemplars within our community. And, the simple solution of, well, let's just be more religious, read more Quran, fast more days, good advice. But it's not going to solve all of these particular issues that we have within each of our communities. And I think it's not just for the so-called religious leadership also. It's not just for the imam or the chaplain or the sheikh. It also needs people who've studied some of these societal issues from a sociological perspective, from a psychological perspective, early child care specialists. These minds need to come together and really think about practical short-term solutions, because we're not going to fix the whole community tarbiyyah and thing overnight, and people still need to get married now. And we also need to think about in the long term, so that in a generation from now, we're not having this same topic on the weekend, healing the marriage crisis. We don't want to talk about this a generation from now. 25 years from now, we don't want to talk about this again, even though I suspect we will. But the idea is we want to work towards a way where we're talking about something more important, inshallah. So those are just some ideas, and I think I've spoken long enough. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu fikum, Shaykh Walead, for this summary of the problem and the marriage crisis is but a manifestation, is but they call the manifesting part of the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg. The problem is deeper than that. The problem is a problem of tarbiyyah, as I could hear. The problem is a problem of tarbiyyah, and you pointed out to the problem of tarbiyyah in the male part more than, which is true, because it is the problem is manifesting more with males today, which is true. We have kids and irresponsible, and we have women by nature are driven to become responsible. And just count the attendees here, and how many unmarried girls are here, please raise your hands. How many unmarried girls? Raise your hands. Right. How many unmarried brothers are here? Raise your hands. You see? So the rest of them are, so you see the father, married people, they come just to see. So we have only 3 unmarried brothers, and we have over 13, if I could count well, unmarried sisters. So you see the difference. Women are driven towards responsibility by nature, or the society. The pressure of the society is still that way in at least in our Muslim community. You pointed the lack of manhood and the lack of manliness as well, which is a problem behind this, which is a big cause, and I would explain it as an overconfidence on the part of males, and lack of care for the feelings of the other part, of the other party. So in counseling, many girls, they come seeking counseling before marriage, and in the first month of marriage, and within the 3 first months of marriage, and within the first year of marriage, but rarely a male would come and ask for counseling, and even if he asks, rarely he would submit, and he would listen to what you have to tell him. They are overconfident, and that's the problem, and that's lack of manhood. Being overconfident and thinking that you know it all, and thinking that you are an expert just because you are a male, and that just because you knew how to bring a girl to tell you are the most handsome man in the world, and you brought a girl on her knees to admire you and to tell you are the most brave person or something like that, doesn't mean that you are actually a man. So there is an overconfidence on the part of males, and lack of care for the feelings of the other party. Started with the lack of care for the feelings of their mothers and fathers, of their parents. It started with the lack of care for the feelings of their sisters. Again, Shaykh Walead, really, he just said everything I wanted to say, like usual, and that's why I invited him. And it was really seriously, and wallahi, subhanallah, when I met Shaykh Walead the first time at the Seekers Retreat, and I said, who's this man? He's just saying everything I want to say in just more eloquently, and that's it. And alhamdulillah, so why making myself tired? Just invite Shaykh Walead and just say everything you want to say, and you convey the same message in the. But alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So, so the boys are raised, and the problem of boys is the generation who are now 20 or 25, something like that. Boys are raised in a very bad way. Now even girls are raised in a very bad way. But at least for people who are 25-year-old today, you still find some girls who were raised in a decent way. That means, I don't mean by decent that they don't go party or something like that. Decent, that means they help their mothers, they clean up the house, they clean up their mess, etc. So, but the majority of boys are not like that. The majority of boys from who are 25-year-old today, they were raised just to sit there on the couch, and his sister he has as many females, right? As many females who are living in the house. He has servants. He has his mother is the chief of servants, and then he has his 3 sisters, and then his wife will join the crew at some point, and she will be meant to replace all of them together, and seriously, and then what happens? It's very problematic. And now you come to Canada, she will have her driving license, and I have seen with my own eyes this sheikh who studied overseas, and it's not an Arab thing. This brother was a convert, God bless him, and he went to study overseas to become a alim, Hafid alim, and he became an expert in all the madhahib, etc. And then his wife was driving, and it was winter, and we were driving behind, and it was winter time, and then the car stopped, okay, and then she came out without gloves to fill in the gas, and he was sitting in the car with his gloves reading his word. I went just to him, I just flipped, that's why I'm Hamdi. I said, what are you doing? I told him, what did you study in Mauritania, seriously? And then you became an expert of the fiqh. What did you study? And couldn't you at least give her the gloves? You are sitting, you are sitting in the car. They said, yeah, but because she turned off the engine, it's cold. I said, how about her? She's filling the gas for you. And she went inside in a shara'i khalwa, basically, because it was after midnight and she had to go to pay inside. And he was reading his word, his Dala al-Khairat. God bless him, seriously. So we have that a lot, especially in the generation of talibul ilm and these people of madrasa and these people who think that they are smarter than everyone else, and it is because of lack of manhood and lack of manliness. We have men today that don't know how to repair things. They have to put two things together. They have to repair their bikes, etc. Because everything is virtual, and this problem is going more and more. It's growing more and more. I will let Shehnaz after that speak about the lack of womanhood. So how to so you have so I will let her talk about that. But yes, indeed, there is that thing. The void. What is a healthy way to approach the other one? That's a big problem. Marriage, if I could put it in this simple sentence, is the most sacred project, or is one of the most sacred projects approached through the most profane ways. Can I say it like this? This is how it is, because this society, we know it is a sacred thing. When we celebrate it, it has to be with an imam, etc., or with a priest if we are Christian or whatever. But how to approach each other, kind of no one will tell you how. And we leave it like that. And the majority of people today, they have no way but the profane way, how to approach the other one. It's very profane. There is a void, and people they keep like reinventing the wheel. People they keep like, how could that happen? How could that happen? So the questions that Answer Shehnaz spoke about are really serious, and our community today, we cannot call it community, we cannot call it a civil society, because a civil society is the society that would offer solutions and alternatives and solutions and healthy ways for its members to achieve their goals. We don't have that. We don't have that. If people, young people, they feel like they are left on their own. It's an adventure, and it's so sad to find this sister who did her master's degree and her PhD and her ADHD and everything, and then yeah, it's a master after the PhD. So, and then when she wants to get married, she doesn't have any sacred way how to approach it. It should be a profane way. It should be like, okay, the internet, or even these programs, dating things, programs, or Muslim dating, or and apps, etc. It's seriously, it's very profane. And even if they meet in a masjid, their brain is conditioned that as if marriage is a aib. We have a problem in our paradigm. Marriage is a sacred institution, but the way to get to marriage, it's you don't find fathers really finding a good fit for his daughter. It's as a aib, and fathers still, they get offended when you it's a taboo. It's kind of they feel like as if it is a humiliation or something like that. Seriously, and While we find in the Sunnah that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was the one who asked for the hand of Sayyidina Ali and the hand of Sayyidina Uthman for his daughter, and he gave a hint to Sayyidina Uthman as soon as his Sayyidina Uthman was married to one of his daughters, alayhi radwanullah, and then the day of her janazah, Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he told him, "You are sad?" He told him, "Yes." He told him, "Well, her sister is available, basically, if you want to get married." And for Sayyidina Ali, we know the story. He called Sayyidina Ali and he told him, he was looking, he was choosing who would be a good man, a good husband for his daughter. And he asked for that. Our grandparents, we have this Tunisian proverb, "اخطب لبنتك ما تخطبش لولدك." يعني find a good husband for your daughter, and you don't need really to worry a lot about your son, but really worry about your daughter. Go out. Just if you find someone good, just call him. We read it even in the Quran, how Sayyidina Shu'aib asked Sayyidina Musa for his in Abi Yad'uka. It's clear. We read it in the Quran, we have it in the Hadith, and that's a mature society. That's a mature fatherhood. That's a mature. We have a void today, and we leave our especially our girls on their own. And how do they approach this? And broken hearts. Man, they don't even, and part of the lack of manhood, he knows that, for example, it's not very difficult for him to understand that that girl is interested in him. It's clear, and he's not interested in her, obviously, but he keeps joking with her, he keeps laughing, he keeps talking, etc. And so she keeps, the poor girl keeps building hopes, etc., etc. It became really, it took away from the sacredness, and I don't know if anything sacred left in this institution of marriage, in the way we are approaching it. My advice is, let us approach sacred things through sacred ways. It's a sacred thing. It's a contract with God before everything. The spiritual part of it, yes, there is a social part, there's a psychological part, but the spiritual part of it, there is a dua. We have to approach it with the dua. We have to approach it with a contract with God. We have to approach it with nadhr with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we learn from Sayyidah Khadija alayha salamullah. She was the one who asked for Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and she kept herself available for 10 years waiting for him. Since the day she heard of him, and since the day she heard that a man came, a Jewish man, she said, who just told them, the lucky among you will be marrying this prophet, and she just khalas. She said, I'm not going to get married, I'm going to wait for this man. And for 10 years she kept waiting for him, and she made it, and that's not a aib, and she tried, but it was sacred. She did not go to her friends and giggling, oh, I'm going to get him, I'm going to make him come, I'm going to win by the end. And no, she did not do it like that. She just kept it between her and her Lord, and she prayed, she did lots of supplications, and she approached it in the sacred way. We have two women in the sacred text who got interested in two good men. One of them had the wrong approach, the other one had the bad approach. Imra'at al-Aziz got interested in Yusuf. And that's a sign of maturity if you think about it. She got interested in a good man. Don't think just because of his physical thing. I mean, we are talking about Yusuf. It's not, alayhi salam, it's not a matter of physical, it's not because he was utiya shatr al-husn or because he was very handsome or something like that. I mean, women, let us be honest, they do not get attracted to the physical beauty. They get attracted to the chivalry. They get attracted to the bravery. They get attracted to the akhlaq. Same thing. Man, they don't really get, if they are not kids, if they are man, they don't get attracted to the physical beauty, but they get attracted to the shyness. They get attracted to the haya. They get attracted to to the humility, they get attracted to these qualities. So Imra'at al-Aziz, yes, we can imagine, she got attracted to that beauty in Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. The whole picture, though, her approach was wrong. Her approach was wrong. She kept talking to the Niswatun fil Medina, and she had all of that. She made it an adventure. And then the way was made so long for her and so hard for her to get to her. Khadija alayhi salamullah, she did not share that secret with anyone. She kept it between her and her Lord. And she prayed and she made she made a vow. Ya Allah, if you bring this man and if you make me the wife of this man, I will be his partner. I will be the first one who believes in him. I will be his support. And subhanallah, and look how things. And when I read these things in the sacred text, I find that there is a difference in approach. This is what I understand. The way we approach sacred matters have to be sacred. And yes, I hear the call from Ustadha Shehnaz and from Shaykh Walead. We need, as a community, we need to fill that void. We need to build something. We need now to respond to that problem. We need to find solution for that. How for our children, for our young people, and not even, why only young? When you talk about marriage, you're talking about young people, by the way. No, I mean, if she's 50-year-old, she doesn't have the right to get married. It's not true. I mean, unmarried people who want to get married, even if they're 60 or 70, if they want to get married, we have to facilitate, as a community, we have to think how to facilitate that through a sacred way. Through a sacred way, through a way that we need to respond to that problem. And there is a vacuum now, there is a void now, and all kinds of alternatives, all kinds of things are happening, and people are going to. There is a danger. There is a danger there. Naam, I repeat it again. Marriage is this sacred project that is approached with the most profane way. So we need really to think about this. Barakallahu feekum. Tafadhalu.
Allahu ya Allahu, Allahu ya Rahim, Allahu ya Allahu, Allahu ya Kareem. Of you, my Lord, I'm asking the gaze of your affection to heal all wounds and hidden diseases and addiction.